They say a river remembers everything, even when no one else wants to. And in Colombia, there is one river that has carried more than water, more than trade, more than songs of fishermen and birdsong. The Rio Magdalena has carried memory and mourning like a wound that never quite closes. It winds its way from the cold, misty peaks of the Andes down to the burning Caribbean coast. But it is not just geography that gives this river its power. It is the blood spilled into it, the stories whispered along its banks, the unmarked graves beneath its surface. For centuries, the Magdalena was Colombia's lifeline. It fed the towns, it birthed trade routes, it ferried poets, rebels, presidents. Gabriel Garcia Marquez once called it a liquid road, the bloodstream of a country still figuring out how to forgive itself. But the river has also been a silent witness, sometimes unwilling, always unable to forget. In the mornings, when the fog lifts just enough to reveal the shape of the hills near Honda or Mompox, locals say you can hear the dead. The river flows quiet at those hours, not empty, not loud, just quiet, like it's waiting. And if you listen long enough, you might hear the soft rhythm of paddles, or the low, hushed chant of grief. During the worst of Colombia's armed conflict, those long, dark years of paramilitary violence, guerrilla warfare, and narco-fueled terror, the Magdalena became a graveyard. Bodies were dumped in the current, day after day. Entire villages disappeared. Survivors, too afraid to speak, learned to live with the silence. The river kept their secrets, but it never let go of the truth. In Puerto Barrio, a town that clings to the Magdalena like a scar, fishermen used to find bodies tangled in their nets. Sometimes the corpses had names, most did not. But something remarkable happened here, something both haunting and beautiful. The people began to adopt the dead. They gave the nameless corpses names. They buried them with flowers and prayers. They lit candles. They wrote letters. They called it adopción de cuerpo, the adoption of bodies, and it was an act of resistance against forgetting, against fear, against the idea that a human being could be erased just because someone decided they should be. There is something profoundly human about the way this river holds contradiction. It flows with unbearable pain and yet allows life to bloom along its edges. Crops still grow. Children still laugh on the banks. Men still cast their lines into the muddy water, hoping for fish. And maybe, without saying it out loud, hoping not to find something else. The Magdalena has been called the soul of Colombia. But souls don't just sing, they ache. They bleed. And this river bleeds. Still, along its shores are towns like El Banco, where cumbia was born, where drums once drowned out the sounds of mourning, where the music is defiant, full-bodied, a cry for life in the face of death. And in Barrancabermeja, oil and industry choke the waters. But the people keep telling stories, keep remembering, keep naming. Because in a land where forgetting can feel like survival, remembering becomes an act of rebellion. If you ask an old man in a riverside cafe what the Magdalena means, he might not answer you directly. He might just point to the water and say, "It knows," and he'd be right. The river knows. It has seen more than any book, more than any camera. It has carried dictators and saints, rebels and orphans. It has carried the innocent and the damned. And it does not judge, it just flows. But in that flow is a kind of testimony. When the mothers of the disappeared come to the water's edge and kneel, when they cast flowers into the current, they do not speak. They let the silence speak for them. The silence of a river that has held their grief, that has never forgotten. This is not just a river. This is a wound that shaped a nation, and it is still healing. To understand the Magdalena, you must walk beside it not just on a map, but on foot. Through the towns it feeds, the people it shelters, the memories it cannot let go of. You begin to notice how everything here depends on the river. The food, the stories, even the sorrow. In a village near La Dorada, A woman named Luz still washes her clothes in the river. Her hands are cracked from years of scrubbing, but she doesn't mind. The river is company. She says, it listens, more than people do. Her husband disappeared during the conflict, one of thousands who never came home. She never found his body. But every day, she returns to the water, talks to it like she's talking to him. And in that ritual, there's something sacred, something that keeps her whole. These are not rare stories. This is the norm along the Magdalena. In towns with names like Beltran, Cimitara, or Magang, grief has seeped into the soil like the morning mist. And yet, these are also places of music, color, faith. A child will pass by with a plastic drum and beat it like a heart. A mother will shout across the river to her daughter with joy in her voice. Life insists. The river is a contradiction like Colombia itself. It is blood and baptism, a grave and a cradle. The same waters that bore the dead also deliver babies in boats, their mothers holding them close as they cross from one bank to the next. The midwives speak to the river like an old friend. Take us gently, they whisper, as if the Magdalena might listen. Sometimes it does, but not always. The environmental wounds of the river are also impossible to ignore. The silt is thicker now, the fish fewer. Industrial waste flows in from oil refineries and towns that grew too fast. Barges cut through the water, leaving behind clouds of oil and chemicals. Deforestation in the Andes has changed the rainfall. And as the seasons shift, so do the floods. Some towns vanish beneath the water, while others dry into cracked earth. Still, no one leaves. To leave the Magdalena is to leave memory itself. And for many here, memory is all they have. Years ago, the Colombian government announced plans to recover the river, dredge it, straighten it, tame it for trade. They called it progress. But many along the riverbank feared what would be lost, what would be erased. The river, after all, has never been a clean page to write upon. It is a manuscript full of tears, full of songs, written in blood and joy and silt. And perhaps that's why the people resist forgetting, because the river has remembered so much for them. In a country where truth was often buried beneath fear, the Magdalena became the archive. It held the voices of the silenced. It told stories others tried to erase. It became, quite literally, a witness. In the town of Mompox, where the river swells like a dream and the colonial houses lean in to listen, you find altars by the water, candles, flowers, little pieces of paper with names, sometimes only first names, pressed under stones. Mothers leave them there, grandmothers, even strangers. These are offerings not just to the dead, but to memory itself, as if saying, you mattered, you still matter. And the river takes them in, not with fanfare, not with fury, but with that same ancient silence it has always kept, a silence that holds everything. This is the Magdalena, not just a river, but a mirror of a country still learning to face its reflection, the good, the evil, the in-between, the hands that killed, the hands that healed, the voices that sang, the voices that screamed, all of it still moving, still being carried downstream. As night falls along the Magdalena, the river changes once again. It becomes slower, darker, deeper, not just in the way the water moves, but in the way it feels. The sky reflects off its surface like a memory returning. And just like memory, it distorts, but never disappears. There are fishermen who still go out at dusk, paddling into the thick silence with their nets and flashlights. They don't speak much. They've learned not to. Some of them remember the days when bodies floated past like driftwood, when the river stopped being a provider and became a messenger of death. And though those days seem quieter now, the river still remembers. It always does. In Barrancabermeja, A city once torn apart by paramilitary violence and oil wars. A quiet effort has emerged to re-educate the river's image. Artists paint murals of water and healing on crumbling walls. School children write poems to the Magdalena, calling it their abuela grandmother, keeper of history. Activists gather in small circles to share stories of those who vanished. They do it not for justice, many have lost hope in that, but for remembrance. For peace. For the dignity of not letting a name disappear without a voice to echo it. One mural shows the river as a woman, not young, not old, her eyes closed, her arms full of children, lovers, ghosts, her dress made of water, her face both tired and serene. Madre Magdalena, it says beneath her. Mother Magdalena. Not a god, not a saint, but something older. Something even more permanent than belief memory. And this is what the river has become. Not just a body of water, but a collective soul. A map made not of geography, but of grief and grace. It doesn't ask for anything. It doesn't demand redemption. It simply moves forward, carrying everything with it: lovers who kissed on its shores, soldiers who bled into it, rebels who shouted into the wind, children who watched the sky from its banks and dared to dream of more. But the dreams are fragile. Hydroelectric dams now threaten entire sections of the river's flow. Sediment builds up where the water once ran free. Birds vanish. Fish struggle to spawn. Communities that once relied on the Magdalena's rhythms now face a future of droughts and floods. What was once steady has become unpredictable. What was once sacred is now seen as a resource to be used, sold, controlled, and still the people remain. A priest in El Banco leads an annual procession to the river's edge. He blesses the water. The villagers sing, they wear white. Some carry pictures of those they've lost. Others simply walk in silence. The ceremony is not religious. Exactly. It's spiritual. Yes, but more than that, it is human. A ritual of belonging. A declaration that even in suffering, there is meaning. You cannot control a river by force. The priest says, you can only accompany it, respect it, remember what it carries. There is wisdom in that, not just ecological, but existential. Because the Magdalena teaches us something most people would rather not learn: that healing doesn't mean forgetting. That wounds don't need to vanish to stop hurting. That silence, and if listened to carefully, can tell you more than 1,000 screams. At dawn, a fog often settles over the river like a soft veil. It blurs the lines between water and sky, between past and present. And in that moment, it becomes clear the Magdalena is not linear. It is not a line from one place to another. It loops. It returns. It whispers. In one bend, a father teaches his son to fish. In another, an old woman sings a lullaby to someone long gone. And the river flows between them like breath, continuous, unbroken, full of memory, full of mourning, and still full of life. There's a house near the town of San Sebastian de Buenavista, built on stilts above the Magdalena's floodplain. It has no address, no sign, and no locks. Its paint is faded, its roof patched with tin and plastic, but it carries something rarer than beauty: resilience. An old man named Jacinto lives there. He's nearly blind, but he knows the river better than most. He speaks of it not in facts, but in feelings. The Magdalena doesn't run. He once said, she remembers her way. Jacinto was a boy when he first saw men with guns come down from the hills. He remembers hiding in the reeds, watching as the river turned red. He remembers the silence that followed not peace, but absence. And he remembers, more vividly than anything, the day the river brought back his brother's shirt. Just the shirt, torn, muddy, caught in a branch like a flag no one salutes. For Jacinto, the river took his brother, but it also gave him a way to grieve. Grief on the Magdalena is not a destination. It's a current. It changes you slowly, the way water shapes stone. You don't notice the erosion until you realize you've been reshaped. A little smoother, a little quieter, a little deeper. All along the riverbanks, shrines rise up like reeds. Some are small across, nailed to a tree, a faded photo pressed into plastic. Others are grand, painted in bright blues and pinks, lit with candles even in daylight. They are not always for saints. More often, they are for sons, daughters, fathers, and lovers. People no longer here, but still present. Because along the Magdalena, presence isn't measured by breath, it's measured by memory. Somewhere near Plato, a mural of a young girl stands tall above the river wall. She's smiling, holding a single marigold. Below her, the words "Te sigo buscando." I'm still looking for you. No name, no explanation. Just a simple truth known to too many here: the river does not return everyone, but it never lets them go either. And in that strange in-between, between disappearance and presence, between mourning and living, the culture of the Magdalena has developed its own kind of poetry. Not the kind that wins awards or fills bookshelves, but the kind whispered in kitchens, sung over hammocks, or murmured to babies who will grow up knowing both the beauty and the burden of this river. It's in the way people dance in spite of everything, in the way they turn their backs to politics and corruption, but never to the water. In the way they still call the Magdalena La Madre, even when she takes. In many ways, this river has become a stand-in for the soul of Colombia itself, wounded, enduring, and stubbornly, miraculously alive. And yet, the river cannot do it alone. For all her memory, for all her sorrow, the Magdalena is not eternal, not in the face of human neglect. Climate change, deforestation, damming, pollution. They are not abstract concepts here. They are daily truths. Truths that steal the fish, poison the water, kill the birds, push families farther and farther from the banks they once called home. It's not just the past that is buried in the river now. It's the future too. And that's why voices are rising, slowly, quietly, but surely. Fishermen speak to lawmakers in Bogota about the dead zones in the water. Scientists plead to protect the wetlands. Artists paint the pain and the hope. Journalists dig through archives. And women, always the women, keep telling the stories of the disappeared, of the survivors, of the river that has seen it all and still, somehow, carries on. In doing so, they refuse to let the Magdalena become a symbol of loss alone. They demand that it also become a symbol of truth, of memory, of what it means to mourn openly and to heal collectively. Because what is healing if not remembering with love instead of fear? The river's long. It flows through centuries, through generations. And if you sit beside it long enough on a cracked wooden dock or a rock slick with moss, you'll begin to understand it's not just water that flows here. It's the essence of a people who've been hurt and have learned not to be hardened, who've lost but have refused to forget, who know that mourning is not weakness but a way of keeping love alive. The Magdalena is Colombia's open wound, but it is also its beating heart.